where we have a premium. We're going to look at both straight line and effective interest amortization schedules and journal entries for both of those methods. And then we're also going to look at selling before maturity. So it's a problem that kind of encompasses quite a bit. Bats Corporation issued 800,000 of 12% face value bonds for 851,705.70. The bonds were dated and issued on April 1st, 2019, are due March 31st, 2023, and pay interest semi-annually on September 30th and March 31st. Bats sold the bonds to yield 10%. Prepare a bond interest expense and premium amortization schedule using the straight line method, and requirement 2 is the same thing using the effective interest method. Requirement 3, prepare any adjusting entries for the end of the fiscal year, December 31st, 2019, using both the straight line and effective interest. Requirement 4, assume the company retires the bonds on June 30th at 103 plus accrued interest, and prepare the journal entries to record that bond retirement with straight line and effective interest. So before we do that, I am going to show you how to calculate the bond price using Excel. We already have the bond price in this example, but there's other problems where you're not going to have the bond price and you'll have to calculate that, and we can do it really easily in Excel. And so I would recommend just setting it up where you have these inputs: face value, stated interest, market interest, total number of payments, and number of payments per year. And then that way we can set up our amortization schedules and our price referencing these cells, and then in the future you can reuse this and just change these couple of inputs. So we have a face value of 800,000, stated interest was 12%, market interest is 10%, oops. It looks like this is a 4-year maturity, so there's 8 payments total because it pays twice a year, and there's 2 payments per year. So now that we have that, we're going to calculate the cash payment so that we can use that to calculate the bond price. And the cash payment we're also going to see down in our amortization schedules again, but we're going to calculate it up here just for the purpose of having the plug for our bond price. So we'll say, and I put here in the side column E what this formula looks like just so that you could refer to it while I'm typing the formula, but we'll say equals the face value times stated interest times time. So we're going to say open parentheses 1 divided by total number of payments per year, close parentheses, and we get 48,000. So now that we have that cash payment, we can calculate the bond price. And so we're going to say equals, and we're going to use the present value function, open parentheses, and it's asking for the rate. And this is the market rate, but we have to remember to divide that by the number of payments per year. So divide that by 2. And then it's asking for the number of periods, and that's the total number of payments. And so that's in C21 or 8 total. What's the value of this payment? And it's not wanting me to click right here on C24, so I'm just going to type it, C24. That's where we just calculated the cash payment. And then the face value or future value is 800,000, close parentheses, and we get that same 851,705.70, which is what they had given us in the problem. And so this is just really useful. If you don't like the fact that it came up as a negative, it's doing that because it's expecting us to make a payment of 851, but you can just put a negative sign in front of your PV and it'll display it in the positive. Okay, so that isn't exactly relative to this problem, but I think it's important for you to understand how to do that. So we're now going to look at a straight line amortization schedule for this bond. And so remember that straight line is meaning that it's going to be the same for every single period. So we're just going to divide that premium equally the whole time. So it's very simple. we'll start out with 4/1/2019. Our book value of the bonds is equal to this $851,705.70. And then after that, we have interest payments on September 30th and March 31st. So we'll say September 30th, 2019, March 31st, 2020. And I think we should then be able to drag these. Oh, am I going too far? Nope, just need to scroll down. And because it said that they mature on March 31st, 2023, so we'll keep dragging down a little further. Okay, there we go. So on September 30th, 2019, we already calculated our cash payment, but we'll go ahead and just calculate that again. So our cash credit here needs to be the face value times the stated interest times our time, which is a half, and we get that 48,000. And let's go ahead and make these absolute cell references so that we can drag this formula down. And if you're on a Mac, that's Command T. If you're on a PC, I think it's FN or function F4 maybe. You might have to Google that and confirm that. I apologize. Okay, so now our cash payment's going to stay the same, and we can figure out what the premium is going to be throughout the life. And that's going to be equal to, open parentheses, the bond price, and we'll make that absolute, minus the face value, make that absolute, close parentheses. So that's giving us just the premium of the $51,705.70, and it's going to be distributed equally for all of these payments. So divide that by the total number of payments, make that absolute, and we get $6,463.21. And just like in the previous examples, the cash payment minus, minus our unamortized premium gives us our interest expense of $41,536.79. And then our book value is equal to our previous book value minus our premium. And now, assuming that I'm going to actually change these to comma formatting. Assuming that I did lock in all the right cells, we can just drag this down. And there we have it. It's done. And as you can see, this is the straight line method, so the payment should stay the same, and that is what they did. And the book value is changing and updating until we reach that 800,000, which is our face value, so that makes sense. And then, of course, the really nice thing about this is that we can change it to 700,000, and it updates for us. The only thing I'll caution you against is if this is a discount. So you'll want to create a different amortization schedule for a discount versus a premium, and just keep both of those available. Just because the calculation is a tiny bit different. So now let's do the effective interest. We still start out with that same book value of $851,705.70, and we can just really copy the dates and the cash payments, I suppose, down if we want to. Oh, I missed one. Okay, so that's going to stay the same. And now we can calculate our, I don't know, I guess the location of these is like throwing me off. I'm just gonna switch these. And that's a debit. Okay. All right, so our effective interest expense is going to be equal to our previous book value, and we don't want that to be an absolute cell reference because we want that to drag down every time, times our effective interest rate, so that 10% times our time, and we get 42,585.29. And so then I should have locked in up here the effective interest, so we'll make that absolute. We'll make our time absolute. Then the amortization of the premium is the difference, obviously, between our cash and our interest expense. And our book value is going to be our previous book value minus our amortization. And so now we should be able to drag this down. And we've completed the effective interest amortization schedule. So now we have both of the straight line and the effective interest. So now it's saying prepare the adjusting entries for the end of the fiscal year, December 31st, 2019, using the straight line method and the effective interest. And I'm just going to do it on the side over here next to our amortization schedules. So for the straight line, well, I guess for both of them, it would be the 31st of 2019. But we're going to do the straight line over here next to our straight line. And so on December 31st, 2019, we have to do an adjusting entry to account for the accrued interest from September 30th until December 31st. Because obviously we're not going to get paid until March 31st, but we have accrued interest up until this point. So we have our interest expense, our premium on the bond payable, and our interest payable. And I'm going to move this so it, okay. They've made it simple for us because doing September 30th makes it exactly half of these numbers that we've already calculated. So they made it simple, but we could have said, well, we'll just do it as if they didn't make it simple. We'd be saying our interest expense for March 31st times however many months. So we could have said like 2 out of 6, but in our case, it just is simple and it's 3 out of 6 or 1/2. Oh, shit. Apparently got a little carried away. Our interest expense times 3 out of 6 gives us $20,768.39. Then same thing with our premium. Our March 31st date times 1/2 or 3 out of 6 months. Oh, but I didn't, this should have been D32, I apologize. So that premium, and we have $3,231.60, and then we can just add these together, and it's $2,400, which makes sense because that would be half of $48,000. So that's what our journal entry looks like using the straight line method. Using the effective interest, it's going to look the same, just the numbers are going to obviously be slightly different. So let's pull that down. And now we can do the same thing where our interest expense is equal to our March 31st interest expense times 1/2. Yes, we do want those two. Make this a little bit bigger. We want the 2 decimals, but we could have it common. Okay, and then the same thing, our premium, our March 31st premium divided by 2 or times 1/2, and interest payable is still going to be that same 24,000, but we can add these together to confirm that that's what we get. So I think that's simple enough. Then we took care of our adjusting entry, and then there's, of course, the chance that the company would reverse that entry on the 1st, or if not, when they received that payment, they would just account for the rest of the interest and eliminate this payable. Okay, on the 4th, assume the company retires the bonds on June 30th, 2020 at 103 plus accrued interest. Prepare the journal entries to record the bond retirement using the straight line and the effective interest methods. So let's do the straight line first. We have 6/30/2020. And first we'll deal with that accrued interest. And so we'll have these same 3 accounts: interest expense, premium on our payable, and the interest payable. And this time we're looking at the 9/30, but again, they gave us exactly half because we're in June, so we have to account for July, August, and September. So we'll say our interest expense is equal to our September 30th interest expense divided by 2. Our premium is equal to our September 30th premium divided by 2. And when you look at this, it's the exact same because this is our straight line method. So that should make sense to us. And then on the 30th, we also need to deal with actually eliminating that bond payable. So we have our bond payable. We're also going to have our interest payable and the premium on the bond payable. And so let's see, at this point, September 30th, we have the book value of $832,316, but we also just dealt with this additional premium. So that means I should have added those together. That means that the book value of our bond right now is $835,547.67. And so if we're retiring these, I guess we could have just known at 103, but that means that our retirement price is $824 because 800,000 times 103% gives us $824. And so that gives us a gain on this bond redemption. So we'll put our gain there, and then obviously we're paying cash to actually retire it. So we have our bond payable, which is of course 800,000 or equal to the face value. And then our interest payable, we just calculated as $24,000. The premium on the bond payable is equal to our previous premium would have been the $38,779, which we can calculate as that previous book value minus the face value and close parentheses. But then we also need to subtract out this $3,231 that was that accrual. So we have a premium of $35,547.67. And then our cash is going to be equal to our, I already calculated the selling price up here, but we'll do it again. So it's equal to our 800,000 times 103%, but it was as well as the interest, so we need to add 24,000 to that. So we get cash of 848,000. And then of course, this should say gain on bond redemption, I'm sorry. The gain we could calculate as the difference but of course we don't want that to be in the negative. Oh my goodness. What about this all wrong? So we could calculate the difference and we get that 11,547.67, or like I was saying over here when I was just trying to determine if it was going to be a gain or a loss for the purpose of which journal, which account we were going to use. We know the book value is $835 and the sale price was $824, so we can subtract those from one another and calculate that same gain that we just calculated here. I'm gonna erase these numbers because, well, yeah, it's kind of making it look a little messy. Okay, so we took care of the gain for the straight line method, and now we can take care of it as well for the effective interest. We'll come down 6/30/2020. We're going to have these same accounts, of course, just the numbers will be slightly different. So on 6/30, we're dealing with our accrual of interest, and so we'll say that this is equal to our 9/30, September 30th, interest expense divided by 2. Our premium is equal to our September 30th premium divided by 2. And that should still give us the same 24,000. And then for the elimination of that bond payable, we're going to use the same accounts. Again, the numbers are just going to be oh so slightly different. So our bond payable is still equal to that same 800,000 because we're eliminating the entire thing. Our interest payable, still that same 24,000 we calculated in our adjustment. Premium on the bond payable, so we'll say equal to our March 31st book value minus our face value of 800,000 minus this adjusting entry of 2,984, and I'm not actually sure why I did parentheses, but we'll just keep going with it. And so we get, oops, I should leave those, 37,620.67. And then our cash, it's going to be the same thing, so we don't need to recalculate that. And of course, we can then calculate the gain. And so you can see that it's just slightly different. Using the effective interest, we have 13,620 gain, whereas with the straight line, it's 11,547. And so of course using this effective interest is more accurate and precise than just using the straight line where it's distributed evenly the entire time. And let's check. Yep, that was all we needed to do. All right, thanks.